Thank you very much. I'm really impressed with all of the changes that have been made in states and all of the progress that has been allowed under this one-size-fits-all law. It seems to me you can't quite have it both ways. You can't have all of this change that has been developed in the states or all of the reluctance to change that's been developed in other states and say that this is somehow one-size-fits-all. What we asked was whether or not children in the 4th grade from all the social strata and economic strata of this country, were they reading at 4th grade level? And were they reading at 8th grade level? And the resounding answer early on was no, horribly so. That was a tough criteria. Mr. Schaefer, you'd be surprised to find out that you're not required to have a teacher's license in Colorado under federal law, and I have the bruises to show it, because we said you could certify teachers a number of different ways, in which time the states attacked the federal government for tampering with the license law. So do however you would like under the law. And it's interesting because as Mr. Luna strikes out of what he thinks is necessary in terms of college and career-ready standards, accountability systems, and school improvement system, and goals, and meaningful targets, and the rest of that. And Mr. Balfour, what you point out, your testimonies are essentially the same, that we need to move in this direction, and we need some incentives, and we need some sideboards, if you will, to make sure that the states do it. Because, Mr. Balfour, as you pointed out, 10 states increased their graduation rates, and 10 states seem to go in the other direction. My own state increased the standards, reduced the cut scores. My own state is dumping huge numbers of children into the alternative assessments, way beyond the students who cannot take advantage of the regular assessment program, be they with disabilities or other factors they've decided to avoid to make the test scores go up. These games have historically been played. The question is now, when we see all of the reform that's taking place, before you wouldn't say where your qualified teachers were, you wouldn't say where the distribution was, your graduation rate, any improvement made you AYP. We had this great example of where the dropout factories were making AYP, but they were graduating less than 40% of their students. And that's why we put in the federal regulation to start asking these questions. So schools and states have had it sort of both ways along the way. But we see this remarkable, and I agree with Mr. Lewin. This is the greatest environment for school reform I've seen in my career in here, 38 years on this committee, and we should be taking advantage of it. We just went through this process where now 11 states have been approved for the waiver program. Those states had to make submissions on how they would deal with the Common Core standards, with how they would deal with assessments, how they would deal with graduation rates. And apparently another 28 are waiting in the wings, or maybe 30 states are waiting in the wings and starting to make application again, and New Mexico, of course, was approved yesterday. Mr. Balfour, you were on the peer review, and I've looked at some of the comments of the various peer reviewers as the negotiations were going back and forth on the waiver process. Could you enlighten us as sort of what you saw there in terms of proposals for accountability, for targets for performance for these systems under the waiver system?
Right, sure, yeah. I think it's a good example of actually a good federal check and balance on state initiative. So if you read across the published peer review comments, you can see a very common theme across all applications that there was concerns about insufficient subgroup accountability, insufficient grad rate accountability, and potentially not enough attention to capacity building to actually turn around the lowest performing schools. And essentially all the states were asked to revise and resubmit, and they all got stronger accountability at the end of the day because of that sort of check and balance. And the grad rate accountability, it was often unintentional, and that's why you just need to have these checks and balances. People aren't always intending to try to game the system. They're complicated things. So many states have created performance indexes. They've added important college and career readiness measures, which are really good. But then they almost inadvertently weighted graduation rates as only 10% of the index, which means you could actually, there's an incentive to push out kids because you only get a small penalty for that and a very big achievement gain by having fewer kids with lower abilities taking those tests. And as soon as that was pointed out to the states were more than willing to sort of up the accountability, but they needed that check and balance for that to happen uniformly.
Thank you. Time is running out here, but I just want to say, Ms. Casimir, thank you for your testimony. it would be hard for me to believe that a bill would leave this Congress to go to the President's desk without an evaluation system. But as you know, as you describe your own evaluation system, your ability to participate, to have design, to have feedback is critical on how those evaluation systems are dealt. You know, I'm one of those who don't believe the federal government should impose that evaluation system on it, but we ought to have a system to make sure that we're sorting through the best talent available for the greatest number of students.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I completely agree.